The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the Force Center podcast feed, and this particular episode is the Book of Boba Fett report. We're going to dive into Chapter 2. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok. Man, welcome to a discussion on many levels of Star Wars. Which one do you love? Which one do you get off on the elevator at, or do you ride it all the way to the top? We got a great discussion.
I love the endless number of metaphors that you and I can come up with for discussing Star Wars, and I like this new elevator one. I'm just going to mash my hands into all the buttons and stop on every level. This was an amazing episode, I think. I'm going to gush like a water car on a space train because I thought this one was amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to discuss Chapter 2 of the Book of Boba Fett. This one is entitled The Tribes of Tatooine, written once again by Jon Favreau and directed by Steph Green. Steph Green's credits are numerous, but a lot of, I would say, kind of premiere television, Americans, Watchmen, Preacher, Luke Cage, Scandal, lots of things that are genre-based and lots of things that are not genre-based, but clearly a great director, in my opinion. It is, this episode is about 50 minutes of actual story. We'd like to start our discussion by setting the scene from our perspective as fans. Ken, did you watch at midnight again?
Yeah, well, a little bit later. So that it was a busy day at the Around the House. And I was very excited again, knowing it was like Tuesday's like Book of Boba Fett day, right? It's like you're looking towards that clock. And by the time Grace and I both settled down, it was like 12:40. So when I queued up the episode and I saw that time, I was both excited and dismayed that I knew I'd be up till 2 a.m, which is fine. It's a small sacrifice here. Oh, small sacrifice. But yeah, I loved it. I was really excited. And then that, a lot of times maybe I don't like to know the length of the episode, but then I remember halfway through, I thought, I was like, oh my gosh, there's still so much to go. And I loved that. So that actually worked in an advantage for the episode for me.
Yeah, me too. I had a similar thing of my wife makes it to almost midnight, but we watch it again together the next day. So she went to bed and I did my little Boba Fett rituals. I got a different Boba Fett action figure out to watch the episode with me and pour myself some whiskey. And my wife got me that nice Boba Fett shirt for the holidays. So I showed her that I was wearing my Boba Fett shirt to watch the Boba Fett. I'm in my own home, but I'm being the guy who wears the band's t-shirt to their concert, but in the privacy of my own home. Yeah, and I didn't even look. Just when I clicked on it, I saw the 52 minutes. It didn't even have a thumbnail when I clicked on it at like 12.
Same.
12:01. It was just the watch the episode now was the description. Like, fair enough, Disney Plus. I'm going to. Yeah, and I happened to see that it was 52 minutes, and I had just a good reaction of, okay, well, I think that will probably feel like a more full episode to everybody because sometimes the length can hamper people's enjoyment of not feeling like they got enough. And then I had the same experience while I was watching it of like, I kind of kept expecting the episode to end because I'd already seen and appreciated so much. But then when it came to its end point, I was like, this is great. This is absolutely a full meal.
Yeah, at the Star Wars buffet, we're to elevators, buffets, all the ways you and I like to discuss Star Wars are on display here today.
It was a buffet and an elevator. And then were you able to go to sleep because it was, almost 2 and you were tired?
Yeah, you always need the 20 minutes to half hour to check your stocks, check IMDb to make sure, some of the characters that you want to see confirmed or listed or not. And then, it was a little buzzing after this of just a lot to take in and more than anything, especially at the end, really moved. And so I had a lot of fun just kind of laying in bed thinking about it.
Yeah, for me, it was like I had a really hard time going to sleep because as we're discussing, it was really powerful on a lot of levels from just the fun and the thrill. Like I wanted to get out my action figures and act it out. But also, yeah, just kind of affected and moved by the depth of the episode. So, yeah, I finished watching at 1:00 and I think I went to bed at like 2:30 because I just kind of was sitting up thinking. So let's dive into what we actually thought about the episode. It sounds like your review is generally positive as well. What was your overall reaction? Why did you love it in the big picture?
I'm going to go to somewhere in the middle of the show with this feeling I had. I think we always lead with our hearts and souls here in Force Center. And there was a point in this episode where I got what they were doing. Like I went like, oh, I get it. I see what you're doing. And then shortly after that, there was a point where I just felt it, where
Yeah.
it took over. And, some out there might be on board for the ride. Some might be jumping off of it like a pike being thrown from a train. But I really just kind of released, and to be clear, was enjoying the episode, but just had this very intellectual, like, oh, I get what they're doing. There's a training sequence in which there's an exchange of skills, and I you kind of stop there, and we love digging in there. But then you and I and others just love it when your heart opens up to Star Wars, when it really hits you, moves you. And I just sat back in the couch and just was like, I'm feeling everything this episode's showing me and telling me.
Yeah, I think I'm in a very similar place of like, I definitely had, an intellectual reaction to it, and we're going to dive into all the big ideas, but I was just emotionally affected on a couple levels. One, just like the just basic success of the storytelling of the action was super exciting because I cared, because I was really on the side of the Tusken Raiders, because I really wanted a victory for Boba Fett. Just that real successful engagement of like, sometimes there's a fight that I like in a show or a movie, but it's like, it's the good guys and the bad guys, and they're doing their thing. And this was about the actual action, but much more the emotion behind the action. So there was like that level of depth. There was that hope for Boba Fett to really move forward in both parts of the story. But I think the thing that I reacted to as well on the whole every level of the floor, every floor that the elevator is taking us to, is this felt to me like a unique independent piece of Star Wars storytelling. It's a part of the Book of Boba Fett, which is kind of part of the Mandoverse in my opinion, but it's just this one chapter, but it's connected to everything else. But this particular chapter just felt like a tour of what makes Star Wars great, that it's this incredibly odd and deft mix of kind of depth that is emotional, relatable to your real life, but also feels symbolic and mythic and cross-cultural. The action itself was like strange, weird, great space fantasy action. There was actually a lot of really successful comedy in this episode, which to me was like perfectly balanced. It wasn't like this is a very serious episode and then we have one character who makes jokes. All of the comedy came out of the characters and the cultural contrast and trying to understand and trying to BS one another. Just so much great comedy. And then on top of that, the final big thing for me of like why this to me has so much of the Star Wars DNA is a big part of Star Wars that is important is the world building or the galaxy building. And we will talk about it a bunch, right? This was a canon junkie's delight.
Yes.
And you can talk about it from maybe a negative point of view of, when you get into canon, it can be bad to obsess on who's going to show up. Do I know that character for somebody from somewhere else? Do I recognize them? I only think that's negative if that's the only thing you focus on. And this episode had so much great stuff with story and character and comedy and action that the canon stuff for me, what was rich about it was, there's excitement to see characters' ideas, but every bit of canon was world building. It was these infrastructure details that make this big strange galaxy feel real. We've known since 1977 that Han was hauling spice for Jabba. Well, we know where the spice comes from. It's Kessel. We know who runs Kessel. It's the Pikes. It's not just, I recognize that. It's literally this connective tissue. And like we've known what a gaffy stick looks like forever, but to see what that means to people, right? We know what Tashi Station is, but now we see how humans actually feel about it and what kind of lives are lived there. All of the canon stuff is rich galaxy world building, lived in universe stuff to me.
Yeah, this word nostalgia is so part of just the daily discourse in a lot of these properties, right? We've talked about it. We're going to talk about it on the crawls and George's nostalgia, and I think it's a great conversation to have. And I've been getting this question some of the other shows I do on my own channel is there too much nostalgia? And I think that's a fair question to ask all the time. But every time you have to analyze how they're using it, and you're so right. The idea of just Hutts showing up is cool in and of itself, but the use of it, the connective thread, like you said, and what it is saying about it, the why of Star Wars, it's all on display here. And sometimes things are just like, that's a thing. But I always argue that sometimes when Finn picking up the training globe, the ball in the Force Awakens Falcon scene, like that's a fun wink. The movie doesn't live on that. It doesn't build on that. It's just there for you. And I think sometimes the things, there's a little confusion on the two. Like and I think you're so right. This continues just to expand and change. I will never underline never watch New Hope the same way again. When the Tusken scenes come up. Never.
Right.
It's changed me forever.
Yeah. The Tusken scenes and in A New Hope and in Attack of the Clones. And just a lot of people already discussing what is this going to mean for Kenobi? Because everything is very connected. Really, really great stuff. So I think for me that I liked that it was so many things that Star Wars does well, all sort of deftly blended together. And still did feel unique, right? Like, I think I can point to lots of bits of DNA of what makes Star Wars, from the mythic to the silly to the socio-political. But then at the same time, like, it feels, this meal has a different texture because it's Godfather meets Western meets indie art film.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, we're taking the elevator up to the Star Wars buffet. And once we get there, there's a nice docent named Steph Green and Boba Fett taking us on a tour of Star Wars. I love that you and I are just putting all this together into one thing. No, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. It is, this episode was completely singular while being such a key part of the larger picture.
Yeah, and I think that's another big thing for me is while in some ways I did find this episode more thrilling than the first episode, in that great Star Wars theme of celebrate the individual and celebrate the community, which I think is very present in this episode. Yeah. I don't think this episode would be anywhere near as thrilling without the wonderful work done in the first chapter.
I agree.
In particular, I feel like that first chapter, we needed to see Boba Fett at his lowest in both of the narrative timelines.
Yeah.
In the beginning of his journey with the Tuskens and his first steps of trying to be the crime lord. And, by the end of that first episode, he has a victory in the Tusken timeline, part of the narrative. But that first episode going, here's kind of what he wants, here's kind of what he's struggling with, that sets us up where this second episode is kind of rousing because in both narratives, he takes a step closer to accomplishing what he wants.
I agree. When we dive into the themes in a moment, you touched upon something from last week that I think flows so wonderfully into some of the things they were talking about this week, which is what you would want this to do, right? There was parts of the first episode that I would say I think I'll kind of want to rewatch that and maybe like bits of it more than this one. And then there's more of this episode that I was like, I'm so glad I can move forward with the story with this one. I think you're right. They're working in concert together really well. As again, they should, and we would think they would.
Yeah. One last kind of big picture question that I wanted to ask you before we get into the details of this chapter. How are you feeling about this series, Book of Boba Fett, being a chapter in the general Mandoverse? Like, obviously, this relates to all of Star Wars in thematic ways and canon ways, but there is a structure to it. Some of it just being the literal presentation with the music style being similar, with the concept art at the end, the credits literally being the same, but also a lot of the same locations with Tatooine, a lot of the same kinds of underworld in issues of community and honor. Are you feeling like Book of Boba Fett is a chapter in this larger story of the underworld and the Mandalorians of this time?
I think so, and I think so in a really good way where I feel as though you wouldn't have to watch right now. You wouldn't have to watch Mando to appreciate this, and perhaps vice versa. And this there's some other big picture stuff I think I can jam into this kind of part of the discussion. Joseph, is I just love the pacing for this show, which includes the rhythm and tempo of the dialogue and action, which I didn't necessarily love for Mando, especially season one. It took me a while to maybe get used to that. including acting choices, styles, directing choices. But I think it all kind of flows, and therefore it's working for me now as this one piece. And now we have this, remember when, hey, Boba Fett shows up and you see him and like, why is he dressed like a Tusken Raider? Well, now you know, and it's like flowing back in. I think I'm enjoying that. But I'm so curious to see what Kenobi does, what Andor does, Ahsoka, the rest of it, because we imagine some of it's, Ahsoka spinning off and away from Mando. That's going to make sense. But Andor and Kenobi are going to be so their own beasts here. I'm curious to see how I feel about it all then.
Yeah, I think that's the way I'm going to feel. Obviously, Kenobi will probably spend some time on Tatooine, so maybe there'll be some similarities there. But I just kind of feel it's dealing with similar themes. It's dealing with characters who do have some overlap. They're both Mandalorians. They're both bounty hunters. They both have issues with trying to choose what kind of a code of honor. So I've seen some people kind of approaching this as, oh, well, Disney's made 2 live action shows, and this one's really similar to the first one. And I feel like I would rather approach it as they are connected. They are a part of the same fabric. And I think Kenobi and Ahsoka and certainly Andor will have a different energy and a different presentation.
Yeah. And I have become somewhat obsessed with this style here. Obsessed. New episodes weekly from Joseph Scrimshaw. Check out the show. All the directors going even through Mando are definitely finding themselves within it. This episode was so unique in its own way. But Favreau is the credited writer. Obviously, there's a lot of people that touch these stories and everything. But the creator and writer, Joseph, just become obsessed with the idea that Lucasfilm said, John, go ahead, tell some Star Wars stories. Get out of the kitchen for a second. Stop making things with Roy Choi and make a Star Wars. And he did not jam it full of pews and swooshes. He's exploring so many other aspects of Star Wars, and that makes those moments of pews and swooshes and smooshes just have such greater meaning. And I have 3 years on, or 3 shows on now, 2 years or whatever from Mando season 1, episode 1. I am more in a position to every week just sit back and enjoy his style of presentation. And again, don't necessarily think I want that beat for beat with Kenobi. Definitely not Andor. I think Andor's going to have the real different feel, just the way it's shot and put together, obviously. But yeah, go to your question. I said connected, part of a bigger story, and then eventually we're going to sit back and just pull it all in. It's not unlike a trilogy for me, which is super connected to its own emotions and themes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is tied together with Favreau's storytelling perspective, which is, I'm kind of, from what he said in interviews and from my opinion of watching, that I'm going to try to dig into why did Star Wars hit me so hard as a kid? And I'm going to get into those ideas, that sort of tip of the iceberg style of storytelling that is about minimal, precise dialogue, meaning being contained mostly in very precise symbolic actions and choices, real sense of patience of, hey, sometimes a half an idea gets thrown out, not a half an idea from the writer, an idea that is only half clear to the audience. And sometimes we'll follow up on that whenever. If it's important to the story, wait a year and you'll find out. I mean, remember how much some audience members were vexed by, well, Mandalorians take their helmets off all the time. And just that tone of patience of, we got you, wait a year. Same thing with, why is Boba Fett wearing the Tusken stuff? We got you, wait a year. That sense of patience, all will slowly be revealed. Like, this is a story that's going to blossom slowly over years. That tone is just delicious to me. Yeah,
there's a extreme level of confidence to do that, right? Especially in Star Wars. Again, there's a lot of different ways to enjoy Star Wars, and I think every one of these episodes, especially this one, present a lot of those different ways. But there's just a big, not little swagger. Boba Fett and Mando both have swagger. Let's be clear. There's a swagger, but there's a quiet confidence. And his patience is so right, not just in terms of, what does that mean? But just like every episode just has a lot of room to breathe. I've really come to appreciate that more than I did Mando season 1. I'll tell you, that's been a personal journey for me, and a rewarding one at this point.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm excited to hear what you really responded to in this episode. So let's dive into the big themes, the ideas that are at stake in this particular chapter. Where did you go?
I'm going to start with a kind of like a pre-theme and then get into some of what I feel is like, perhaps the big question in the episode. It's almost not fair to include recap stuff, but I enjoy watching recaps. I never press the skip recap button. Even if I'm watching Game of Thrones season 4, episode 3 for the 90th time, I still watch the recap from the previous week because that's kind of setting you up a little bit of like what we're dealing with here. You and I have a great episode and a great series beginning of the opening crawls, which will include the, talk of the Clone Wars news reels. And I've admitted I sometimes skip through mentally, not physically, but mentally skip through the Clone Wars news crawls, which doesn't set me up well for the episode. So all that to say, Joseph, the recap starts with the line from last week of fate sometimes step in to rescue the wretched. And just this kind of Boba Fett's view of himself at one point, in a way, is that his view of himself wretched and needing cleansing, rebirth, purity? Is there some kind of big redemption he feels he needs? Questions I'm asking, not so saying there's answers or it's all true, but also, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit in my notes, but fascinated by this big, giant spiritual journey with some themes we're going to talk about, still has Boba Fett being a crime lord. He's not opening an orphanage. He's being a crime lord. So I'm obsessed with that this question that it kind of proposes to us there of just like, is Boba Fett, is this his view of himself? That's where I started. And then I go into bigger themes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is, talking about patience, the fact that the recap starts with a line from Mandalorian season 2 a year ago, right?
Yes.
And it was an answer to a question from the Mandalorian, but it is a real thematic thing that I think this episode does a great job of telling advancing the crime lord story, telling a complete chunk of the Tusken Raider and Boba Fett narrative, but in doing that also raises all of these really intriguing questions and fears.
Yeah, and sorry, and go back to your connection question. That's right. Fate steps into that's from Mando, right?
Yeah, that's from the revelation that Fennec Shand is alive and talking about what their bond is. That basically they both know what it is to be left for dead, and that's why they have such a bond.
Right.
And that's what's so great about this Tusken narrative. Like that made sense when you were able to infer. Like, yeah, Boba Fett had a rough time.
Yeah.
Coming out of the Sarlacc. Like we could all guess that, and we saw what happened to Fennec. So that made sense. It worked. It had a great rhythm. It was a great, amazing line last time. But now to see like that's kind of my mission statement.
Yeah, yeah, and it just proves it's all collapsing into one thing. I can't tell the difference between a Mando episode and Boba Fett episode 1. It's just all there.
Right? Yeah. No, I was really with you. I love that line in Mandalorian. It was really powerful for the recap to actually start with it. And I think for me that the fact that where you went with it immediately is going, okay, that's kind of a clear line of, hey, sometimes you think you're totally down and out and alone, and fate in the form of another person comes in to help you back up, right?
Yeah.
But that wretched, is that an indication that looking back on his life as a bounty hunter, working for organizations that he ultimately finds to be dishonorable, he's looking back at himself as wretched, not only because of his failure of ending up in the Sarlacc, but because he wants to make different life choices.
Yeah. There's a lot about this episode that made me think that we are seeing a strong continuation of the Clone Wars era Boba Fett stories, more than just getting behind the mask of that mysterious bounty hunter in the original trilogy. That's definitely there. And I don't even want Favreau's notes on that. And maybe he'll talk about it around the table with some cameras rolling. But you know what I mean? Like I was watching this particular episode, even some of the lines, the humor, the beats, and it was Daniel Logan, the voice of the Clone Wars, of course. But I was just like, I feel as though we're really picking up the ball from that journey and that angst and pain and suffering that child was going through at that time. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, and I think that is what a big tension of what is happening in the past with the Tusken Raiders, and is what is happening in particular even more in the crime lord attempt present, that there's that tension in those Clone Wars episodes where Boba Fett has a sense of honor that he clearly got from his father. Hondo in particular talks about, like, your father would do the honorable thing, or his thing is convincing him to just get power no matter who he needs to step on. Even if people don't deserve to be killed, kill them so you can get power. And I'm really intrigued by the idea that he started out wanting to have honor, and then he saw this easier way to power, and spent a decent chunk of his bounty hunting career being merciless and just killing anyone in his way because that's the faster way to power. And that what he's wrestling with now is like, I want that power, but I want to walk an honorable path to get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this episode, kind of beyond growth, it just kind of showcased this rebuilding and moving forward based a lot of what your journey was to this point. And that's a big Star Wars theme, of course, nothing new there, but I love seeing it for Boba Fett. It's kind of crazy. We're seeing that guy. We're seeing that guy go through changes, and I think it's really working.
Yeah, Boba Fett goes through changes. That would be a good subtitle for this episode. Yeah, I think for me, there's a lot of kind of individual themes and ideas and connections between what I think are once again parallel narratives with the Tusken Raider story and the Crime Lord story. I think in particular, just like last week, he was kind of flashing back to the Tusken Raider time and remembering a time that he felt out of place in the culture and totally weak, but he reclaimed his power, and he's feeling uncertain in the Crime Lord world. He gets robbed and face down in the sand again. In this week, he's remembering a Tusken Raider story where he really took that next step and he handled something. And in the Crime Lord part, he is trying to do that again, right? I feel like the parallel narratives are, can I handle the Hutts the way I handled the Pikes?
100%, and territories, claims to land, all those kind of things. Oh, fascinating stuff there. Yeah, and last week, repeating a beat there, but last week set that up, how you define your victory and how you reclaim your power. And here he is building on that.
Yeah. And I think for me to pick up on what you were saying about change, rebirth, I think there's all these, the symbolism kind of laid down in the first episode of the water and the sand and the trauma of childhood. And what does the armor mean? Is the armor actual strength or is it a crutch? All those kind of things build to this episode, all of Boba Fett's actions, but in particular, that vision is so great. That it really takes a lot of images and ideas that I think were present in chapter 1 and sort of crystallizes them into, for me, this clear pursuit of who is Boba Fett. Well, at this point in his journey, he is somebody who is afraid of being alone and weak. That shot back on Camino of watching his dad leave and putting his hand up, right? I mean, what's the? I need the Max Rebo band to start playing "Cat in the Cradle," right? Great generational, parenting issues, classic Star Wars stuff. But it's all about like the connection to that moment of his dad leaving, then the feeling utterly claustrophobic and alone in the Sarlacc and the tree representing that. So he's got all these fears of being alone. Even his armor can't protect him, alone and weak, and the vision and all of his actions are him pushing past that fear. And in reward, he builds a new kind of armor by literally donning the, not literal armor, but the symbolic wear of the Tusken Raiders. And he finds this new kind of strength because he finds community. So I feel like he is addressing, if his fears are being weak, alone, and armorless, he answers those by finding a new kind of strength that is both individual and community-based, and he literally gets a new kind of armor, a new kind of weaponry that is forged utterly out of his own strength.
Yeah, clearly on display. Yeah, that vision stuff is so great, and you're right. When you coming home, Django? I don't know when, son. I'm going to Coruscant. I'm going to Coruscant. Yeah, and that was one of the kind of topic sentence of themes here was this idea of that the cold open asks us of what makes you feel fear. Just all through this episode, lots of moments of very strong people, just strong people, whether physically, based on their position of power, their reputation, skills, having to discover or face down what makes them feel fear. The idea of something monstrous, someone abusing their power, you feel like you can't stop it. And in your past, your loss of self and safety, the armor you're talking about. Or maybe sometimes it's just Black Chrysanthemum and he makes you feel fear. So I don't know.
There is a lot of staring down between the Nightwind and the Nightwind assassin, the non-existent Rancor, the Hutts. All that stuff is so great. I think that's a really good point, that it is really about like who's gonna buckle first when it's a kind of a stare off with fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Getting into some of the kind of nuts and bolts of this particular chapter, I really felt like there was this great theme of who controls what and why. You can really take it into some real world socio-political history of who controls what land and who comes to claim it and why and how. But just within the world of Star Wars, right? This keeps coming up again and again. In the Crime Lord section, Boba makes it pretty clear of like, yeah, I claimed this territory and it's mine. And the Hutts are trying to claim it back, but there's a very different way in which they're trying to claim them, right? Mm-hmm. Fett seems to have some respect for Jabba, even though he ruled with fear. He has zero respect for Bib Fortuna, and he makes that very, very clear, right?
Coward Bib Fortuna, yeah.
Because Bib Fortuna just kind of came in and took it through weakness and maybe money and hired guns. And then the Hutts are kind of trying to do that too. They're just trying to come in and go, look at us and our ability to be imposing and cause fear. But also like, there's this very specific, like with that, like, I don't care what's on what your tablet says.
Mm-hmm.
It's this real position of like, what you have is earned by who you are and your actions,
mm-hmm.
not by legal red tape, not by, fear, money, hired guns, what your kind of made up laws say. I took this in a real way and you're showing me your little document. Cool. I don't respect that.
Yeah, and how much of it do you think also has to do with just like how the other person views you, the Pikes and their view of the Tusken Raiders, the Hutts and their perhaps view of him as nothing more than a hunter? I wonder if that factors into some of that, what Fett's thinking too.
Oh, absolutely. I think so too. I think I think it's so fun to watch the Crime Lord section and the Tusken section and mm-hmm. look at how they speak to each other, because there's a very clear, the issue in the Crime Lord period is who owns this territory and why.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that same discussion with the Pikes once he gets them captured and maskless, that he makes it really clear, like, you have no right to travel through their land, and saying that the Tuskens have an ancestral claim. And the Pikes saying, we thought you were uncivilized raiders. And Fett in particular saying these people lay ancestral claim to the Dune Sea. So I think it really is about who controls what and why. And from Boba Fett's perspective, he feels like I think that the Tusken Raiders come from a place of honor. They come from a place of history. They have put the sweat and the work and the building of their own souls, the building of their own community, and they own this land because they are of this land. When he says that, you're like, you know every piece of this sand.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a part of him that's kind of really trying to approach the Crime Lord rule that way too, of I will come and I will know every vassal. I will walk. I will earn this. I will know every building in Mos Espa. I'm all about doing the work and earning it. Whereas Bib, the mayor, the Hutts, they're all about like kind of made up rules with, red tape and appointments and legal documents. And he's just like, no, you work and you earn it.
Yeah, I love Fett literally on the ground. This running joke of the litter, but it has some great purpose, obviously. And to actually see and hear the twins and their litter and parading through town, and just to contrast that with Fett literally having his feet on the ground of this land. And
right,
getting connected to it.
Yeah, because it makes it all about fear and theater, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, that's great that you look scary up there doing nothing.
Yeah.
Come down here and do something.
Get off that litter and do something. What are you going to do?
Yeah. And I think that's some great, powerful stuff. And even with Tashi Station, I think there's some
Yep.
element of that, of the Nikto kind of take something that is really not of their community. And Boba Fett's just like, okay, I'm going to take it back by force, and I'm going to take my payment by taking a good sip of a drink.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, Fixer saying it's not right. It's just that's a line that you would expect in that situation. But for him just to be like, this isn't right. That's a theme throughout this episode.
Yeah. And I'm going to restrain myself because we could talk about it lots of different ways for a long time. But want to move on to some other ideas. I'm sure that you have some thoughts on this. You already mentioned it. I thought just one of the biggest ideas is that, and what made this chapter so special is that this is about cultural exchange, right?
Yep.
This is about an exchange of strength of Tuskens. Take Boba in and teach him their ways, right? And then Boba reciprocates by teaching them about the technology. And it's so great because it makes it not a story of the indigenous people find a conquering hero who knows how the world really works, and he saves them, right?
Right.
This is so about a merging of, hey, we respect each other. You are teaching me valuable things that I did not know. Let me show you some valuable things that you do not know. It is such a perspective of community, of sharing, and of ignorance isn't bad. Ignorance is an opportunity for us to share our knowledge with one another.
Yes, and I really think this to me connects to some of the larger morality stuff in Star Wars, so we can slide some of that down there too. But
absolutely,
this spun off to something I want to talk about when you're ready to air this theme of fighting from your soul.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, because last week we end with how you define victory, this power, the Boba Fett, image of him with the chains. It was such a victory. But this idea that, Boba is a skilled fighter. We know this. He's really good at what he does. He's killed a lot of people. He's brought in a lot of bounties. Without a doubt, he is strong. Just like the Tusken Raiders are very, very strong. They've been this brutal world they've lived in, and without even don't even factor in the interlopers that have come in. Just the land itself, they have this respectful fear of it. They understand the dangers and they understand how to survive in it. They're both very strong. But I love watching Boba Fett learning to fight with the warrior and just absolutely struggling. It was one of my favorite scenes because I took it as him not being one with his weapon, not really knowing what is wrong at the time or being connected to something that is not yet truly him, if that makes sense. He's Fett the hunter. He's Fett the detached, brutal mask wearing killer that's gone through the land, and he's really got to connect with why he's fighting, and this idea of fighting from your soul. I love watching the Raiders again, who are they know all the dangers of the land, but what they ask them, what makes them feel fear? It is this, what I'm calling the train of pain that is not of this land, right? It is not of this land. And I thought there was a great way that it was shot, edited, put together. Steph Green did a great job with this moment of, we got one creature that has emerged from the sand last week, and this week something emerges, right? We got a little tiny creature, and then you hear
Wart, I believe.
Yeah, Wart, right? And then you hear the rumbling, and I immediately thought, what is it? Stampede of Rancors? Like, what do we got? And to see that it was this train, so not of this land, and that now Boba's, as he's becoming connected to literally his new weapon, which symbolizes the new him to me. He has to, this cultural exchange you're talking about, then has to teach the Tusken Raiders to become one with their new weapons and methods and tech. And now they're fighting for themselves. They're fighting from their soul. And through that, Boba connects with himself and becomes one with his new way and emerges out of that tent. I love that. And this, as he says, this is how we will stop the train. It's true adaptation, growth, and exchange, not just temporary solutions. It's not a fight for power. It's a fight to defend. And I thought that was, I loved watching that, especially on repeat, just the training of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really like what you're saying of like, I think in cultural exchanges, one of the things that can be really beautiful, and I think is beautiful in this episode, is what is the same and what is different, right?
Yep.
And what is the same about Boba Fett and the Tusken Raiders are the kind of the soul of warriors they have honor, they have respect, they're willing to work for what they want. But the means by which they know it, what they actually know, the technology, the weapons is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so they take what is the same, they grow from that. And I think he really is like, I know how to hold a stick, but I'm not feeling it. Right. Like, okay, now I'm starting to, I'm literally internalizing it. I'm understanding how to shift my position to be one with this weapon, to be the one with the way you use it. He's definitely doing that in it. And there's some great comedy, but there's also great power in the Tusken Raiders understanding how to use the speeder bike. And there's even some great rhythm to me with the Mandalorian. This is one of the reasons that I feel like it's really connected, because it's thematic, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the word first comes up, you're like, okay, great, what's this? Oh, okay. But then you get the deep rumble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like the Krayt Dragon, right? And you have a little bit feeling of like, oh wow, what could it be, a Krayt Dragon? It's not going to, because we went through that story, and we know that story, that the Tuskens 100% understand the Krayt Dragon. And if it was a Krayt Dragon, Boba Fett would be like, what the hell do we do, right? And the Tuskens would tell him. But this is like, this is the mechanical encrusted metal Krayt Dragon, and Boba Fett's like, I know how to kill this beast. But if it was the other kind, you would know how to kill it.
Yeah, there's a great shot. One of the key shots is after some of the training montage. We need a montage. We got a training montage, but you come back to that, and Boba and the warrior are training in the background, and in the foreground is a Tusken Raider kind of tinkering and fixing the speeder, not tearing it apart, trying to ransack it like when they do in the beginning. I just love that moment, and Boba's getting it, and the Tusken Raiders getting it. True exchange happening there, true growth. I love that little shot.
Absolutely. And I love everything in cultural exchange with the child, this is one of the things that would not be anywhere near as rich if it weren't built up so well in the first chapter, right?
Totally.
But there's the child that we met, but all the others kind of watching the training and kind of doing it along with them. And just seeing over the course of this episode that Boba Fett continues to be in this place of giving to the child what Jango gave to him and then was taken away, of being nurturing, but giving him responsibility so that the child can grow, right? Gives him that responsibility with the signal. And then the fact that it's the child who's like, holy crap, he made it back from his vision. Like, it almost makes it feel like there was some discussion in the community about whether he was going to make it back. And the child is so happy, and the child stroking his new robes, that emotional connection via this cultural exchange of what is the same across cultures about nurturing and guiding and getting comfort from a parental figure. It's so powerful.
Yeah, they literally the chieftain calling that out of you were a great good guide. I love to tie back to the child and the great little sweet comedy moment of them kind of in a row with their own sticks, like, oh, okay. But to just say that, and this is something you can pull from the episode, and it's the episode certainly addressing and talking about it, but just as a fan and as a fan of Star Wars and as a fan of what they're doing here, it just makes me go back and think, and again, going to the Clone Wars Boba Fett of going from Attack the Clones and literally, he's flying with his dad, learning to kill Jedi, whatever you want to say. He's got his father there, and then once he doesn't, the consequences of Mace's actions there, on the Petronaki Arena, Boba Fett then it doesn't have that. He's on his own, and now he gets these weapons and he gets these ways and he gets this armor. Remember, he has the different armor in the Clone Wars era, and it is just this false sense of what's right. And again, there is no true connection. He's finally learning maybe why you fight and the reasons behind it, beyond yourself. I think Fett's just been so on his own, so without the guides or the wrong guides. So to see that and to see the children reacting to him, for me, just it becomes makes all of Boba Fett's storytelling more powerful.
Absolutely. I did want to ask you about that in terms of his strong reaction to the Pikes traveling through the Dune Sea without paying tribute, right? Because that that connects to the Crime Lord story too, obviously. Boba feels so strong about this is a fundamental truth of the galaxy, of respect, of they have an ancestral claim. This is their land, and you're more than welcome to come through it, but you got to show them respect. You got to pay them. What in Boba Fett's background do you think it is that makes him feel so strongly about that? Is it his own lost home, his own lost heritage?
His own lost heritage, maybe being without a true home for a while, maybe coming around to that. I don't know. Maybe he's also still upset at Jedi for just coming through and doing things, being part of it. Again, we believe in justice for the Jedi, and I'll even say justice for Mace. But hey, things happen, and they even address that in the Clone Wars.
Well, as always, I think I love that moment because I think that's a dubious choice on Mace's part. I think a big force push would have accomplished the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But hey, you got to get that Mace Windu to look up to Dooku like, yep, killed your guy. But I think Attack of the Clones right from the beginning, clearly that's why they pick up that thread in Clone Wars. Attack of the Clones does address that of, well, cool, that was great, but look what happened. Look what you've created. This monster that's going to go around the galaxy for 20 plus years. So it is. Yeah, to answer your question, what specifically? I think this growing sense of honor and him being a vagabond and maybe starting to, especially where he starts last week as a prisoner of them, and how he sees how they connect to the land. I was really particularly moved by him helping with the burying process, the burning of the bodies. It was particularly moved me, and just maybe that's what's starting to change him here. Because flash forward to the Crime Lord storyline, he certainly doesn't have ancestral claim to the palace, but I think that's his point to the Hutts and to Jabba and to Bib Fortuna. You guys just moved into this one here. It was a Bomar monk house.
Let's reinstate them.
Yeah, and not that I don't think he's there in that palace going, yeah, I'm an honorary Tusken, this is mine. I think he has a full understanding and respect for the right way to go about doing it, and this is what he wants to do now. So yeah, I don't know if I answer your question directly, but it's an interesting thing to look into his life to find out where.
Yeah, I think some of it is there for us to parse, and I think some of it is still left to be told because, what we've been told and what we've seen is that Jango did raise him with some amount of honor of this is the way things are done. There's definitely some lookout for number one in what he's being taught. But I have to think that he spent a lot of his time as fully armored warrior Boba Fett in kind of, original trilogy era and before enforcing, like he would have been hired to ride the top of that train for the Pikes, right?
Yes, 100%.
And take those pot shots before. And now he's seen the other side. So I think there is some amount of change. But the real kind of missing component that I have such hope will emerge possibly within a year, because that is the patience game in this Star Wars storytelling, is we still do not have a clear understanding of what Jango felt it meant to be his kind of Mandalorian, his foundling who was taken in, and what of the Mandalorian culture of respect and honor was passed down to Boba. In Mandalorian Season 2, when Din asks him if he's a Mandalorian, he says, I pledge my allegiance to no one. That to me is ambiguous. That doesn't mean, like, he's not like, here's my card carrying, I am, he cares about his armor, his past, his claim to his father's armor. That he has a right to it. That's what he cares about in that episode. But to me, that hasn't answered that kind of fundamental question of sitting there on Camino at dinner time when Jango's telling him how to be a good person in the galaxy. What is he telling him about Mandalore and being a Mandalorian?
It's so, yeah. This is, I always love trying to relate this stuff all to my own life here. But yeah, I don't pledge any allegiance to a specific church, but I'll tell you, my upbringing still dominates every thought I have on my own personal honor, integrity, right, and morals. That's not necessarily a one-to-one comparison, but to hear, to hear Boba Fett say that again through your words, to Din, that just strikes that kind of chord with me. Like, no, there's the organized Mandalore is not what I'm there about, but the things that were put into me, things I was raised in by my father, who had a certain view of it too, because he was cast out of it by certain sections of that culture. Interesting discussion point there.
Yeah, and I have high hopes given where we left off Mandalorian Season 2 with the Darksaber and the future of Mandalore. Yeah. And many Mandalorians run around that somebody's eventually going to come to him and make him have an opinion on the future of Mandalore.
Yeah.
One other big idea that I think it intertwines with a lot of the ideas we've been talking about, but just communication, just the idea of what is communication, how does that tie into respect and honor? Obviously, we just get to see that Boba is learning to communicate with the Tuskens, learning some sign language. They're back and forth. They're working through trying to understand one another in meaningful ways and sometimes funny ways. Um, I love how much Boba Fett has the language and the knowledge to just cut past the BS with the Pikes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he knows the whole thing. He knows the whole deal. So he cuts past the BS and talks to them directly. And they try to, lie and zig and zag. And there's also like just that kind of communication that he is trying to have. I feel like he's always been a little bit of a direct, honorable guy, right?
Yeah.
But now he's had this Tusken experience where people say what they mean and they back it up with their actions, or they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the crime lord world that he is running into is all theater of pomposity, theater of fear, red tape. When he goes to both the mayor and the Hutts try to tie him up with bureaucracy, right? They try to, tell him that he didn't put the proper cover on his PTS report, that with the, do you have an appointment? He's like, oh, no, we're not doing that. He wants to deal with everyone directly in the crime world, but the crime world is built on its lies, its backstabbing, its theater, it's who really hired which assassin. Do you know what's really going on? Can I make you feel insecure? Can I say words that mean one thing while my delivery, my subtext says the exact opposite to you? And I think he's always been a bit of a straight shooter, no pun intended. Yeah. But especially after this experience with the Tuskens, I really feel like he's trying to make the crime world work the way the Tuskens did, of you say what you mean and you back it up in none of this weak, pathetic, lying, red tape BS.
This is wonderful stuff. You're also making me just giggle because I love the idea of Boba Fett as the Bobs from the Office Space going, what exactly would you say you do here to the mayor?
Yeah.
Communication. That's such a thing, because you just touched upon one of my favorite little moments I was going to talk about in comedy. Actually, not even comedy Whimsy. Yeah. I can. So now I can. I don't have to pull it from that section of our discussion. I can jump it in here now, Joseph. One of my favorite things so far, 2 weeks in, is Jennifer Beals as Garza Whip, who is just mastering, just as David Pasquesi's mastering the I'm a politician as aide who's nervous, but also trying to hold you back. The red tape, indeed. But I love she's playing this sigh beneath all of what she's saying, aware of the big situation, trying to, and nothing she's actually saying is communicating what's the truth of what's going on.
Yeah.
And she's doing such a good job with it. I just love just, do you want a place at the bar? Do you want a beverage? Wait. Like,
I'll see if I can find you a table is beautiful, jaw-dropping insult, right?
Yes.
Like, imagine Don Corleone walks into Applebee's and they're like, all our tables are booked. We'll see if we can find you a booth at Applebee's, Don Corleone. Like, it's so disrespectful.
Sinatra, Mickey Mantle, and Billy Martin walk into the Copacabana, and they don't get a table. Would you want to wait at the bar and have a margarita? Well, a martini. Yeah, and I just love that, and I think you're so right, and to see I think he's always been a little bit like that, the Django of it all. What he's learned from the Tuskens and what he's learned about this world after having a long career in it. I think you're absolutely right. Well said, indeed. Love that. I was obsessed with that in the Crime Lord timeline. It's not just comedy; it is no one is saying what's really going on except for Boba Fett.
Yeah, and what's that?
And Fennec too.
In Fennec, yes, and I think in Fennec's being that, like, hey, I'm with you. Honor and respect would be much better. No one's gonna do that, right?
Yeah.
I feel like she's on the same page with him, but she's just got that like realist/cynic perspective of it's not gonna change. That's real cool. You want to do it that way, but while you walk up to somebody and say something directly, I will keep them in my sniper sights because they're not going to be truthful with you.
Well, one of my favorite running jokes is Fennec at every turn going, should I kill them? And then in this episode going, yeah, we'll probably have to get permission to kill them, but we should, right? You want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other big things about this episode that I want to be sure to talk about, and we could talk about it here, or we could talk about it at the end of the podcast when we're talking about what's next, is I think seeing the deep bond, the confirmation that Boba Fett found new community, new culture, really does raise some tension and some questions of what are his goals being the crime lord. Like, I think
Mhm.
personally he wants to be a leader. He does not want to be a warrior anymore. He wants to be the leader, and I think he wants to bring this culture of respect and saying what you mean and earning what you have. I think he wants to bring all that, but is there another motive given the possibility of horrible tragedy befalling the Tuscans?
Yeah, you and I are really in sync on that. There, I had some of those notes in the next week where my next week is more Black Chrysanthemum and what does Boba Fett want?
What is Boba Fett? Okay, well, we'll tease that up and we'll finish the conversation at the end.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, for this particular chapter, what particular ideas in this do you feel like reflect larger storytelling morality perspective of Star Wars?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to a little bit of this cultural exchange. We're certainly not done talking about it. I think a lot of people out there, from what I've poked my head out a little bit, like Punxsutawney Phil, to see if there's any good Star Wars discussions, because I get so that's what makes me feel fear, Star Wars discourse on Twitter. And a lot of people are rightly celebrating, I think, the continued evolution of the Tusken Raiders in our mind. The Tusken Raiders have always been like this. They're just waiting for us to catch up. And Mando's did such a great job with that. The episode that get is, I always say, one of my least favorite episodes. But hot damn, isn't there some great stuff in it? Which is part of being a Star Wars fan, is finding what's there for you. That chapter 5 of Mando season 1.
This episode that everybody is celebrating is partially built on chapter 5 of The Mandalorian and Attack the Clones, two of the less liked chapters of Star Wars, and this is built on them.
100%. We could do maybe we will do an entire Star Wars deep dive on that after the season ends. This is a powerful example of cultural exchange in the face of, you talked about the cultural ignorance, cultural bias, and just straight up cultural, this bigotry that could be out there. I love the exchange. The Pike leader saying, "We thought you were uncivilized raiders," because, by the way, that's what we as fans had grown up with. Maybe on an individual basis, some of you saw beyond that, but
and that was the more respectful name for your culture. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it is what it is from New Hope and everything, but we know where it comes from in tropes and everything. But that line, "We thought you were uncivilized raiders. We were trying to protect our route." And then a little bit beat or two later, Boba saying, "Your lives are a gesture of our civility." Oh, I love that exchange because it ties into some of this big idea in Star Wars of, and I'm jumping like big parts of the galaxy here, I guess, but the rebellion has always been built and portrayed, especially over the last 6 years of storytelling, by the way, of having such strength from diversity, such strength of different ideas and perspectives, and also the trials and struggles through that. I think of Mon Mothma, Saw Gerrera, Draven whispering orders behind everyone else's back. That's been the story of the rebellion. Different cultures, different species coming together. Think of Enfys Nest and the Cloud Riders, and everyone affected from different planets, different cultures, but affected in the same way. And so to see Boba and the Tusken Raiders coming together to fight for the betterment of all is a big Star Wars theme. It's just on real focused display here this week.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think there's so much going on with big Star Wars themes of everyone matters and everyone is connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's part of the reason that I just love the train because I'm excited to see the Pikes and with their masks off in live action because I like the Pikes, but it's not like, what alien should we throw on there? It is this direct connection of these different cultures matter and their actions matter. And it's a cool throwaway line that Han had to dump spice, and that's why Jabba is mad at him, but that comes from somewhere. And it is slaves who make that happen, and to see that ripples out and affects quote unquote nobodies like Cammy and Fixer, right? Ultimately, to see that ecosystem on Tatooine affects these raiders who, they have that great line of there are many tribes, some survive by killing. We've stayed hidden. Like we've tried to just stay out of this, and we can't because they see us in our space and they shoot at us as they go by. There's just that idea that everyone matters, everyone is connected, and I think it really attaches to Boba Fett's perspective, to that great line of "But fate sometimes steps in to rescue the wretched." I think that that line is a real indication of this is why he rescues Fennec Shan, because she matters. This is why he offers honor to the Gamorreans, of people like, Gamorreans, they're not very thoughtful and they just blindly obey.
Just hose
usually
them
the Hutts. So yeah, just kill them, because that's how you handle them. They're not,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, I see your loyalty, and I'm going to ask you to give that to me, and we can share this honor and respect. Boba Fett is coming at this while he is still certainly willing to kill. He's not, saying all life is precious and all life must be protected. But he is saying everybody there is a perspective of everybody has value, and let's look beyond the surface.
I love that. And to tie to what I was saying up top, if Boba Fett views himself as the wretched in this scenario, he has value. And I think we all need to find our own value. That's a big Star Wars self-help tip right there from you.
Absolutely. And I think that was one of the biggest things for me. I really think about this a lot, that Star Wars has, to me, these pillars that say who you are as an individual matters. The choices you make matter. You really need to be the best version of yourself. You really need to find yourself and be loudly yourself. Mm-hmm. But then Star Wars also really preaches also know when to be selfless for the benefit of the larger group. Mm. I think Star Wars really embraces that what ultimately matters is that we're all connected, and what's good for one of us often helps the other, that we are stronger together. Community matters. But the only way you're really going to get to that great community strength is by individual strength. Mm. And that is exactly what Boba Fett goes through in this episode. He goes on his own solo vision quest, right? Dream, whatever term you want to use for it. And because he successfully makes that through that as an individual and kind of gets himself right as an individual, he's rewarded by this huge community at the end, right? Totally in sync with that ritual that's just so great and so powerful and such a celebration.
That was really beautiful. Just on a side note, that got me. Really good stuff.
Yeah. And going off of, what I do not claim to be an expert on the culture in any way, shape, or form, but going off what Tamura Morrison said about the making of the tragedy of that, that being a part of his culture as Maori, that adds some real world oomph to it as well.
Oh, big oomph in this episode, Joseph. Big cultural oomph in this episode.
Yeah.
Wonderful stuff, man. As always, I love just kind of to listen to your takes on this here and this connecting it to the bigger picture and everyone has value. Such a building block of Star Wars. And as we head into Boba Fett taking his a true spiritual journey, man, what a powerful thing. And I thought that tied into something we've heard before here. It is this idea of let the past die, kill it if you have to, continues to emerge as the statement of someone afraid of everything he was and not wanting to face it for their own growth and well-being, right?
Right.
And this is not a direct, hey, let's argue, Kylo's points here, but Star Wars absolutely gives this idea of going into your own past. It moves us forward. This tree from water. What a great sequence of visions and lessons.
Yeah, and just great the symbolism that you can dive into with the water. Just is like victory. It's rebirth, right? Everything from the water car exploding in their joy of like, whoa, this is like, hey, great, we got some blasters and some tech, cool. Water. To that. When he breaks through and he pushes past his fear, he when the tree becomes like the Sarlacc, he could crumble. I'm alone. I'm weak. I'm armorless. Right. And he finds the strength to break it off. And then the big explosion of water, such great stuff. And I've already seen a lot of discussion of this online. It is really great to see other elements of Star Wars explore very spiritual perspective, like of the Jedi, right? There's a lot going on here that one could relate to what we've seen with Jedi of like, it's a trial that Boba Fett goes through. There is a real a symbiosis with nature when you have a lizard up your nose. Kind of joke about it, but it really is that like kind of luminous beings, connecting the spiritual to the physical.
Love that. And as a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fan, I did think it was like a babblefish lizard that he was going to now be able to speak Tuscan. I'm glad that was not what happened. I had a moment of, is he going to suddenly understand them? No, love that. Love that.
I was so I really thought like, okay, this is where we're going. I've kind of been wondering this whole time since he showed up in the robes if he is going to have gone through some sort of go out in the desert, find yourself moment, because that is such a cultural story. That once that lizard came out, I was like, how is this going to lead to that? Oh, okay then.
It was similar to Homer Simpson and that hot chili pepper he eats. It sends him on a similar vision, if I'm remembering that episode correctly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, on Homer Simpson, we can move on. Yeah. We always like to touch base quickly on the chapter title. This was, of course, the Tribes of Tatooine. I think that's, pretty literal to the fact that we spend a lot of time with the Tusken Raiders, but I also think it really does tie the timelines together because it's all these different factions on Tatooine from everything as small as just the everyday people of Cammy and Fixer to the Nikto biker gang to the crime lords, all that. How did you take the title?
Yeah, similar too. Just the people watching, a lot of focus on those watching, including I love watching live action Trandoshans just throw shade at Boba Fett whenever he's walking.
I mean, it just felt like I love just seeing Trandoshans going like, this is our breakfast place, and whoa, what's going on? We were just finishing our eggs.
I'm having a Naboo muffin, and what are you doing here? No, I absolutely think you're right, and just the line for the mayor of I don't think I wrote that one down specifically, but you're going to find running a family more difficult than being a bounty hunter, right? I mean,
yeah,
sure, yeah, we get that. Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the advice. Thanks to Padload. But I do think it connects to what is going on here and the different people on this wonderful world. Which, by the way, subnote here of just and I know I'm not alone. I love Tatooine. And I love spending time here. If Kenobi spends all his time here too, that might seem weird maybe to the general public. I'm all for it. I don't think Kenobi will, but there's just so much there that we grew up with as original trilogy fans. That's this all parts of the galaxy kind of coming out here to hide, to find themselves, to not find themselves, to run away. I just kind of love exploring it. And I think that title kind of scratched that itch for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's so great about this is, Tatooine, connects back to the absolute beginning of Star Wars and the absolute beginning of tip of the iceberg storytelling of what's the deal with that? How does that work? Who really lives here? All that stuff. Who are they? What do they really believe and want? All that stuff. And so it's really fun to spend time here because we have nostalgia and connection to it. But what's even more powerful to me is like every planet could be this deep and rich, Like we could have a whole series set on Utapau and it could be this deep and rich.
I want Naboo, the series. I think there's so much in the history there and the Gungans and the Naboo.
Oh, yeah.
Wrong and how it got healed. Oh, my gosh. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the Sando Aqua Beast really like? I want to find that out for sure. Was there anything in this episode, this chapter that you disliked or questioned?
I'm putting this in all caps, my friend. Stop killing banthas. I just can't. Even going back to Mando chapter 9, I just stop killing banthas. Grace and I just heartbroken over the dying banthas here.
It was it's really rough. It is hard to see those poor banthas fall. The Pikes did answer for it on some level.
They did. No, other than that, beyond that, no, nothing big. I thought this was an episode, like we said up top, so confident and so just like, here's the story we're telling, and I'm behind that, and fun little moments. We'll talk about canon connections, but I would have loved if Boba Fett said, "Hey, Santi," but that's so tiny, minuscule, and not anything to get hung up on. It's fun stuff to think about. I really thought this was just a beautiful, beautiful episode of Star Wars.
I agree with you. I don't have anything I dislike or question at this time. We'll see how the series goes forward. But for now, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into some of the moments we really liked, the canon, the comedy, the action. There's so much great stuff to discuss in Chapter 2 of Book of Boba Fett, and we will do that in just a moment. And we are back to continue our discussion of Chapter 2 of Book of Boba Fett. We are going to talk some of our favorite Star Wars canon, lore, connections to other stories. Ken, I try to make notes as I go through watching the episode the second time. And the first thing I just had to write down in my notes is just holy bleep. I had to edit my own swearing. I wrote it on my notes as a swear word. I thought this was one of the most rich from canon lore connections, being just truly fun to being meaningful.
Oh, 100%. It's funny. Two episodes, 2 times I think we've both audibly gasped, right? And said swear words while watching, And I don't mind. I swear probably too much off air, but fortunately we try to keep it clean. But last week when they went to Attack of the Clones in the arena, and this week, 2 huts coming around a corner. Grace and I both went, oh my. And I went, oh, boop.
Yeah, it just got the door opening, at Jabba's palace right at the beginning, and just getting into, like, we're spending some time in the things that make you feel it, right?
Yeah.
Which is the first thing that I wanted to talk about. Try to write down the ones that I think are big, fun, the ones that spoke to me. If you're looking for something that's very, very complete, we always recommend Star Wars Explained does great things of every tiny Easter egg. So with that caveat, let's dive in. How did you feel about the whole there's no Rancor? It is only the idea of the Rancor that defeated the Nightwind assassin.
What makes you feel fear? The ideas are often worse than the nice little creature down there just wanting a snack. I actually really liked it. It did work for some comedy, but they did such a good job of I thought that was a good use of something we're really familiar with. Of every beat, every shot, the dais kind of moving back up, and that famous shot of everyone looking down. I could almost see the Gamorrean guard with the slobber dripping down on the cage, and from Return of the Jedi, all that stuff was there. And then the reveal, it was just it was funny, but it was also, I think, more than anything, just effective towards the big theme. But loved it.
Yeah, really, really effective on that theme you pulled out. I'm curious for you as a fan, did the trick work on you the way it worked on the Nightwind? Did it go on long enough where you're like, I know Patissa is dead. There's nothing in canon that there's another. Is the Rancor from Bad Batch in there? What's going on? Did you think there was going to be a Rancor?
I was, because, Grace is on the couch with me, and Baxter, our Chihuahua. They both have not watched a lot of Bad Batch, if at all. So I was getting ready to yell, "That's Moochie." And then I luckily I didn't say it, but yeah, I fell for it.
Yeah, no, I thought that was absolutely great, and just great comedy that there's just some sort of rodent in there. Yeah. So absolutely love that, including all the imagery that is familiar and imagery that's new. Moving on, this is a great thing that has been very consistent in Clone Wars and most recently in Bad Batch. We got to meet the mayor, Mok Shayaz, and the Ithorian with the voice translator, where you hear their weird, awesome Ithorian voice, and then you hear the translated into basic. I love that.
It's really nice. Yeah, I agree.
Did you appreciate the kind of different tone of the mayor? What did you think? Do you think that the voice that came out in basic worked for you?
Yeah, which is also Robert Rodriguez, right? He's just getting all these voice credits here in this episode and this season. I actually really liked it, and especially because last week there was, I think generally everyone thought this was the mayor that we saw from the trailer. It made sense, but there was some mystery there, and I just love for what it is. It's not someone. We'll see if he keeps coming back, or to what level Boba Fett has to be wary of him beyond just general level of wary that he and Fennec should have and do have. I thought it was really effective. It was beautifully eloquent in its in his playing and behind the shield of power.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that he just has that sort of like inner sanctum, that nicely appointed inner sanctum with a little throne as well. And outside of it just felt like Tatooine DMV, which I really liked.
Yes. That worked for me in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, when we get to Whimsy and Weirdness, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. I feel like in terms of like the story stuff with the Ithorian, I mean, great to see a live action Ithorian having like a real big character role. And I'm really intrigued to see where we go, because, the Nightwind Assassin claimed that the mayor hired him. So unless the Nightwind Assassin is lying, I feel like what the Ithorian is saying is like, look, I'm happy with my position, and I'm going to answer to whoever I think has the legitimate claim to being the daimyo. And you might want to look into who has that claim right now.
Yeah. The Hutts might have hired me to hire the Nightwind. Whatever. It's all, depends on your point of view. Hey, whatever. Force Ghost on the Log will tell you that. But I love the intrigue behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we got treated to a little bit more time in the sanctuary, where
Mhm.
Garza Flip very successfully insulted Boba Fett. And there were a lot of great characters in the background, some that we got to see. It was great that we got to see the band again. Great that we got to see the classic band sensing trouble and therefore stopping playing music.
You got it. If you're a band, that's one of your things. Go down with the ship and also stop when you need to.
I mean, I think when you audition, right, they have to be like, well, what kind of tunes do you got? What's your stage presence? How good are you at suddenly stopping when there's obviously trouble about to start?
Yeah, and Rebo started to tell the story of, well, there's one, this bounty hunter, I think it was called Bausch or Boosh or Bosch, I can't remember. They came in with a thermal detonator. We all just stopped.
You just stop. You just got to stop on a dot. Even if you're not on the beat, you just got to stop. For my own personal fandom, I absolutely loved that there was an aged Chadra fan.
Yes.
Sounds like a delicious cheese, but that's one of my favorite species, the little bat characters, and I love that there was one spending their retirement money gambling in the sanctuary.
Yeah, love that.
Moving on to the twins. So this was something that I think I was hopeful for. I'm sure many fans were, of the idea that, yeah, that was a Hutt territory. It seems like if anybody's going to challenge Boba for that, the Hutt certainly are. Were you excited that these were appear to be new characters? It's not a Hutt we've met from the Clone Wars, or were you wanting more connection?
I mean, look, I'm in Camp Rada. I want to see a little bit of that thread picked up or closed somewhere. Maybe the twins killed Rada. That would actually make some sense. So no, I loved it. I loved the presentation, the sound, the drums, and then that anticipation of who or what is coming around the corner. And again, truthfully, honestly, I audibly gasped. And just the way it looked, and to see Hutts like this, and it really, really reminded me of Clone Wars stuff, where we see so many Hutts, and sometimes it's like, wow, okay, that is definitely a Hutt doing a character. But it really worked for me, and it was intriguing, and Grace, my fiance on the couch next to me, is wondering, like, hey, what are their tattoos like? What is that? And just us, just both kind of being disgusted at just not just their presence and the way they handle themselves and the use of the creature to pat themselves down. Like, everything about it was really effective, and I'm excited to learn about who the twins are.
Yeah, me too. I thought they were this great balance because, the Clone Wars is great. The Clone Wars animated series, it indulges itself in lots of weird whimsy, right? We get the Hutts with like the little pencil mustache, right? And weird hat and weird monocle. And I felt like the twins did feel like they were of that style without being as silly, right? To have something like, there is definitely something that's personal about them with their tattoos and the fan that the female Hutt twin has. But just the idea of twins, that they were just sort of like, at first it was really fun to be like, are they conjoined? No, they're just kind of twirled around each other. That's kind of an interesting take by itself instead of just a different Hutt.
Yep.
So I really like that, and I like the way they're able to play off it. I was like, ooh, you've upset my sister.
Yeah, and you're very right about the balance. I think if we end up seeing a 1930s gangster Hutt with a monocle and a mustache and a cigarette, we'll see how the fandom reacts to that, who haven't spent time with those kind of characters in the Clone Wars. But I think you're right. They did it well, and just pulled off just really effectively. The look, I mean, I'm going to say it, even just the jiggle of the Hutts as they're walking, as they're being walked up to them, it was all real and effective.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I wanted to say one thing about the approach too. The drums, the band stopping, but the Gamorreans looking like, oh, we know what that is. That was really powerful. There was that great beat for me for a moment. Are the Gamorreans just going to switch sides right now?
Yeah, no,
because there's still that tension of Fennec going, this is not a good idea. But so far, it's worked out well for Boba Fett to have pardoned those Gamorreans.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the other things that's fun for me about the twins, and who knows, maybe it's already developing on Wikipedia as we speak. We're told that they are cousins of Jabba. Ken, check my family relationships. Zero the Hutt, infamous Zero the Hutt from the Clone Wars, was Jabba's uncle. Are the twins the children of Zero?
That would make sense, right? I mean, we don't have the whole family line of Jabba in front of us, so there's possibly others. That would be interesting. If so, even just a passing reference of it would kind of make me giggle with canon joy.
Yeah, that one is not, that is a wild, unimportant conjecture, but that's the kind of stuff that's fun to dig into.
Getcha.
All right, we're going to move on to one that I think is very, very exciting to you because you said on one of our prediction episodes or hopes and dreams episodes that this was one of your hopes and dreams. Ken, let's talk about the Wookie.
The Wookie. This is, and yes, been texting with Alex Damon, seeing articles pop up online, but looking for that official confirmation on IMDb or StarWars.com. But by all accounts and by design, this is Black Chrysanthemum, the bounty hunter, gladiator, warrior Wookie, who is so diabolical and violent and evil and looking for the wrong things. He was kind of asked to leave Kashyyyk, just like, you're too violent, even for us arm-ripping Wookiees.
Yeah. A pretty prominent feature of the early Disney Marvel comics books run, right? Yep. Popping up a lot in working with Fett as well in the comics, right?
Well, so our very first introduction to Black Chrysanthemum is in a panel with Fett, hired by this is when Vader was hiring Fett to find out who took down the Death Star, and we're talking early 2014, 2015 days. And I've just loved this character, even on an older Star Wars rank, talking about bounty hunters. I've ranked him. It's something I've always loved about this character, including he ends up kind of developing or showing a little bit more of a heart. He becomes really intertwined in the storyline of Dr. Aphra. That's where the nickname Santi comes from. And he, at times he's a good Wookiee. He's got maybe a heart of gold buried deep down inside, but he hasn't grown. He hasn't gone through the spiritual journey that Boba Fett has. I was just surprised to see that actually happen when he came around the corner. And when you watch it the second time, you see him kind of hiding behind the litter. But when he comes around the corner, I just got one of those nerd smiles that you get every now and then that you're going to cherish.
Yeah, I'm just going to let myself enjoy the hell out of stuff like this because it is not just propping up the episode. It's not like, there wasn't much story development. There wasn't much character. There wasn't much depth, but I saw some things I recognized. For me, this is just so not that. Mm-hmm. There's so much going on in this episode that I have no problem just celebrating. It's awesome that this badass Wookiee jumped from the comic books into live action, right? And that continued hope, like with characters like Cobb Vanth, or what ended up happening with Saw Gerrera being in one arc of the Clone Wars and then becoming a pivotal character who's in television shows, books, video games. That hope that the galaxy can kind of be connected, continue to have that lived-in vibe, and if you fall in love with a character in the comics or the books or a video game, that they could suddenly step into your living room on the screen is just cool.
Yeah, and you don't need to know the history at this point. Again, Grace sitting on the couch with me didn't. And when I kind of explained what it was, she was like, "That's cool." She calls him now Satan Wookie. And she just loves what is there. And it's so, before you and I were recording, you popped on Zencaster and you heard me watching the scene again. I'm just watching him stare down Fett, and I was getting excited. And if that's the only time I see him and they don't mention him again, or they never say his name, that's fine. That's fine for me. I got this moment. I've been a fan of this character for a long time. And I hope more of that happens. I hope Aphra shows up in a show, maybe this one or another one. I want everyone who has a character they love, that's Sinjir, all those kind of characters. I'd love to get these moments out there.
Yeah, crossing my fingers for live action Embo. I thought this moment was really powerful because it works if you're like, I was not even aware that there were Star Wars comic books. Like, there's a specific kind of joy to it if you know Black Chrysanthemum. We're hoping for an appearance of Santi, but I almost found myself jealous of people who didn't know, because it's just the reason he's cool in the comics is the same reason he was cool on the screen. Is like, but Wookiees are very strong, but they're nice. Yeah. Oh no! What if a Wookiee is really strong and does not seem at all nice? That is terrifying. That guy does not go home for Life Day. Holy bleep,
Yeah, he's not one for Life Day. That's a good point. I'm with you. Yeah. I'm with, because the image itself, just from the shot from the back, it was so well done. Great little directing sequence there by Steph Green. But just the turn of the corner, the look in the eyes. I'm telling you, the eyes. Everyone go rewatch the sequence. Him staring down at. Oh my God, it's one of my favorite moments.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to watch it this evening with my wife Sarah and see how she responds, because she loves Chewbacca and she doesn't read the comics. She doesn't know about this character, so see if what she thinks of, like,
Yeah.
incredibly scary, as Grace said, Satan Wookie.
Now, to be clear, this came after I tried to, I said the name is Black Chrysanthemum, and then so she's boiled that down to Satan Wookie.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
A small thing, I think, that is a wart in the desert, same character that we see burp outside of Jabba's palace. Not same character, same species. I hope it's not the exact same one.
Yeah.
And then we move on to one of the other big canon things of this episode that is really, I think, if you want to enjoy it, great. And if you don't, it's just an Easter egg, and that's fine. That does appear to be Tashi Station.
Mhm.
If anybody is curious, you can go on Disney Plus under the extras tab of A New Hope and watch that 6-minute deleted scene with Biggs and Luke, where Luke goes into Tashi Station and talks briefly with Cammy and Fixer. You see that same great tabletop video game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I want to get into some details, but I just want to start from the big picture. Some people had seen this in the teasers and said, "Hey, we think that's Tashi Station." How did you feel about it?
I'm really excited, and one of those things that maybe that I kind of knew coming, was kind of looking forward, and again, it's one of those things. If this is all we get, awesome. No Biggs Darklighter memorial picture on the wall like Alex Damon was really hoping for. He texted
a big mustache that says "We will never forget." Yeah,
he texted me this morning and said 0 out of 10 for that episode. No Biggs reference. And then it is what it is, and I love it. I love this there, and it speaks of love, and it's not something that is a nostalgia pop, and there you go. And the entire episode is built around these two characters, and whether you know them or not, it works. If it's Doug and Betty sitting there, like you said, the Tribes of Tatooine is an example of power, abuse of power in the territories, and all those kind of things we've been talking about. So it works on that level, but also just Cammy and Fixer. I grew up reading that novel, wondering more about those characters. So it's a celebration of Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fact that there wasn't any winking or nodding, there's no mention of power converters, the phrase Tashi Station was not used. It was just, if you recognize it, great. If you see that in the credits and they say, Cammy and Fixer, wait, I think I remember them from the novelization in the comic book and the NPR audio adaptation of Star Wars back in the day. That they're one of these things that are kind of known by fans. So it's a fun pop for them, but not you have to understand this complex history to get what's going on in that scene.
Yeah, totally. It's the way to do it.
The other thing I really liked about it, I rewatched this morning that deleted scene, right? And it's very cool. Biggs is the cool guy who went out to the galaxy, and he's popping home, to the hangout to kind of hang out for a few minutes. And Luke comes running in thinking he saw a battle, and Cammy and Fixer are real dismissive. Their nickname for Luke is Wormy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, there is this fun headcanon to explore of, we know from that Mandalorian episode where we saw people watching on a holo of the second Death Star, going and in the Empire falling. We know at least from the sequel trilogy era that the legend of Luke Skywalker has spread to the remotest parts of the galaxy. Is there a part of Cammy and Fixer who are sitting there when they're like, this isn't right? Are they aware that their scrawny, overexcited friend Wormy saved the bleeping galaxy?
Yeah, and I think part of the conversation is both of them are bummed that they didn't invest in Apple stock in '82. Like, this is like, man, we did some stuff wrong here. I did not need it in the episode. It just would have been out of place. It would have been fun, but would have been out of place. But yeah, the look around of like, this ain't good. And is this our reward this is what we get for dismissing Wormy?
Yeah. Yeah, I do not want anything mentioned in the episode. It's just a fun idea to me because the Jedi, to me, are about their legitimate power and about their inspiration. And if it was like, how would you feel if somebody who you thought was the weak kid of your group went on to these amazing things?
Yeah,
that might inspire you to stand up.
Yeah, that could be there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's not right. It's not right.
It's not right. It's not right. In that jacket, yeah, man. That he needs a digital watch, right? And a large calculator that is so 1982, that leather jacket.
Do you like Huey Lewis in the News?
I want to know if they get Pac-Man on that absolute pizza parlor tabletop video game they're playing. All right, moving along to the Pikes. Man, I thought that was Pikes the first shot. I was so happy that it was the Pikes. They originated in the Clone Wars. They pop up a bunch of other places, including their big screen debut of the character Quay Tolsite on Kessel. And now here's their big moment to shine with and without masks. How did you feel about the Pikes?
Absolutely loved it. Again, one of those details that the show doesn't sit and linger on. So it's not nothing. The themes aren't built on them being Pikes, just their role in the show. But then it adds to it. World builds, like you said. It's just it makes sense too. Again, this is something that this is what it would be. A spice train of pain run by the Pikes. That's what I would want.
Yeah, I love seeing them and seeing that canon continue. I like seeing them live action with their actual faces.
Yeah.
And that's like that's a fun canon thing, but that's also that connects to Boba Fett's relationship of when he puts the helmet on, when he takes it off, when I'm going to look you in the eyes, and Boba Fett really takes the helmet off and I'm going to look you in the eyes and you're going to tell me the truth. This Pike leader takes the mask off to just bald-faced lie to Boba because he thinks he's an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think when they're having that back and forth about the spice, and the Pike leader's like, what spice? The fact that Boba says the specific kind of spice and Sana spice from the slave mines of Kessel. It's also really a reminder of in Boba Fett's current mind state, he does not have a lot of respect for the Pikes.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
And I love seeing Boba sitting there. He's now the one with the water gourd.
Oh yeah, I had talked last week about Boba Fett seeing different visions of different parts of his life and different roles he has played and wants to play, of the child, the warrior, the leader. There was very much this I have been the warrior, I have led this battle, and in this particular moment, I am being the leader. I am handling this negotiation. I'm asking for the leader to come forward. There's a lot about identifying those roles.
100%.
I also really liked that they actually did give the name to what we've been calling the water gourds, the black melon, and looked that up on Wikipedia because it sounded familiar. It is established as a black melon in an early Star Wars Marvel run in 2015 with the Kenobi story.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. That's a good issue to revisit too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was having a ton of fun saying water gourd.
Yeah.
But I'm now happy to be able to use the proper term of black melon, which sounds like a 90s band for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on, that the kind of shelter area where Boba Fett is instructed in the construction of his weapon, of his gaffy stick, that is from a Macquarie drawing, that shelter.
Totally. And I love seeing that. We tweeted out. I'm sure Phil Sostak tweeted that out as well. I think I saw that this morning while waking up and rubbing sleep from my eyes. So I love that stuff. I love when that pops up. Clone Wars always so good at that. Rebels are just amazing with that kind of stuff. And heck, even the Throne and Rise of Skywalker. Let's not forget that's from Corey as well. I love when that happens.
And I love that modern Star Wars is on a mission to find everything that Macquarie drew.
Yeah.
And make it work, because his work is so amazing and so essential to Star Wars. This is kind of canon and lore, but I was curious if your mind went to a similar place when Boba Fett was in that Macquarie-esque shelter making his weapon, that it felt like a real connection to Mandalorian culture, that there was an armorer guiding him. The fact that it was a ritual, the line that was kind of joking but also truthful from Din Djarin in Chapter 2 of The Mandalorian of weapons are our religion, jumped into my mind. Did you go to those connections?
100% went to that connection. Both in just, hey, some of these first two episodes have similar structure and framing to some of the stuff in Mando, which I see as a strength because it's part of the story that it's telling. And it absolutely, there's a connective thread there, very much so, from Mando's, perspective, the Mandalorian's perspective, I should say, and what we're seeing here. Almost to the point I was expecting him to say, "Are you in armor? Like, is this the village armor?"
Yeah. So I thought that was great. Any other canon or lore connections that you picked up on?
No, but just the night wind assassin just yelling "Eat Chuta." I just love Eat Chuta. It's still McClunky and all the stuff. Karabast, Eat Chuta is still the first and best swear word for me in Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just got that feeling of like I think I just knew, instinctively as a child. Oh, that protocol droid said a very bad word.
Yeah, can't say that at the house. No.
In Empire Strikes Back, I can't go around saying "Eat Chuta." That's what I should have said at the top of our canon section. Holy Chuta.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on then to moments of action in comedy. What were some favorite action moments for you?
I always love kind of these action moments that aren't action at all, but just Fett arriving at Tashi Station, the door opening to reveal that shadow to fight the bikers. That's all the action that you need to know. It's not going to go good for the bikers. Love that shot.
That was a great shot. There's so many individual shots in that Tashi Station action scene, but I think what I really liked is Boba Fett breaking the rifle
yes.
over the thug's head.
Yes. Hilarious stuff, too.
Yeah, and I think it has a little bit of like this episode so much is about the merging of different technologies, and he loses that little bit of connection to, technology that he knows, a rifle. And then he really invests in that training stick he's got.
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
That look that he gives him once he got just the last few cornered, and he's like, "Are we going to do this? Are we going to do this?"
I love when he uses that. It's such a great weapon to just wrap around someone's neck and toss them.
Yeah. Great classic bar fight moment to throw somebody through. Is there any glass available in this small place that I can throw someone through? All right. Moving on from old Tashi Station. What are some other moments for you?
I'm going to jump all the way to the train sequence, skipping maybe some great stuff too about the training sequence and the montage, all the stuff. I think one of my favorite moments was when they're trying to take out this train here, and the Tuskens, the second wave of them, take out the gunners, the pike gunners for the first time. I kind of had one of those like fist pumping, like, yes, we're doing this. Like, I again, this is one of those moments where on an intellectual basis, I was like, oh, I understand. I've seen this, the train, we got a training montage. They're going to take the train. I understood that with my brain, but this episode just hit me in the feels, hit me in the heart. But this is the moment, this is kind of the moment where it switched, where it went from me going, oh yes, the train sequence to, yeah, dude, they got him. We're going to do this. And so I'm really thankful to that moment.
Yeah, watching the strategy again of like get the child up there to let the people, the Tuskens know from a different angle, so the pikes aren't concentrating on them, so they can take their time and take their sniper shots. That is great.
Great.
Yeah, real fist bumping. I think for me, there's a lot of great stuff in the training montage, as you mentioned, but I really loved the twist of, we established that the warrior can easily remove the stick from Fett's hand, and then Fett gets that level of accomplishment. We're like, and now I can remove yours, and that's where often the training scene would end. So I loved the twist that the warrior flips and catches the stick, and like, it's not over yet.
Well, great call, great moment.
Yeah, and then for me, just a ton of beats on the train, so I just had to pick a few. Before I knew that we were going to get to see the pikes all maskless, I really liked the one shot where Fett's on top of the train and he is just trying to get through the pikes as fast as possible, whacks one, and you can see their mask just go flying. I
love that too. It happens a couple times, right? But that first one is very clear. Love that. Loved it.
Yeah, absolutely great. Also really liked Fett using the stick, right? The hook on it to grab the pike by the head and just ripping him out of the train. It was one of those great visceral, like, this train is going very fast. You can tell by how quickly the body falls away. But also it was great to see Fett like really using the weapon and understanding it.
Yeah. These fights should tell you a little bit about the characters. I was just a big fan of the warrior character overall, but just the warrior on the train, just crashing into it, jumping onto it, yanking pikes down, all of it. And then it's such a triumphant moment. It's around 32:12 if you freeze frame it. The warrior pops up out of the train and just has it's such just like, look what I did. Like what a surprise, but just like, yeah, I did it. I'm here. We're doing this. Just another fist pumping moment. Really love that.
Absolutely. Yeah, the warrior, I think it just really, really great in this episode. The one, there's just those looks between Fett of like, I'm trying to train everybody else. I know the warrior's got it, right? So in the
Yes.
warrior coming in, like things are a little rough, like, oh, but the warrior isn't here yet. But now
Yeah.
here comes the warrior. And building to that great shot that I think you're talking about as well, where the pike is poking their head out of the door and it just gets sucked down and then the warrior pops up. It's like it's almost funny, but it's fist pumping too.
Yeah, it's such a great look. It's such a great look. Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah. Any other action moments for you?
Just Fett entering the engine of the train just before he takes out that creepy little spider arm droid there. But just a great, very classic action movie, almost Western, just like, feet first. Indiana Jones, like too, just feet first, taking out the glass, getting in the engine. I like that little end of the sequence.
Yeah, just going straight to where the problem is and taking care of it and crashing through glass. Yeah, absolutely great. Let's move on then to moments of comedy, whimsy, and weirdness. There's always moments of great comedy in any Star Wars for me, but that's one of the things that made this episode so enjoyable to me is that it had great depth, great action, and it was still funny and at times even like silly. So I was really thrilled with that overall vibe. What were some moments for you?
I love it's right from the cold open of just FedEx saying, overpriced, you're paying for the name, which is also me talking about cleaning products at Target after I went to the dollar store. I just absolutely love the comedy of that there. It's her just being in the assassin world and just like, whatever, Nightwind. It's a name.
Yeah, there's so many great lines. That was probably my favorite of overpriced for paying for the name. Is like just a person in a hood.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely great. I think for me, the next moment of comedy that jumped out is all of the Boba Fett trying to get through the red tape in the mayor's office, but in particular that major domo that we met last week saying, oh, pardon the lack of pomp for your entrance. However, I did not see your litter arrive. And then they cut to a shot of Boba Fett just really, really not responding in a way that is a response.
I wrote down that same sequence, just a classic screenwriting A beat of that bullet. Because again, talking about communication and everything. I mean, I'm really enjoying that in this episode, but overall, that I did. However, not see your litter. We've already gone over this, so I know you're just BSing me. You're being a real jerk about it, and yeah, there ain't going to be a litter. You know that. And,
it is. Yeah. There's so much in it. It's such a funny beat because it's about this refusal to embrace change. And I laughed out loud because Boba Fett didn't say anything, but the subtext is, I am so done hearing about that bleeping litter.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So great. Did you have any other thoughts on this section? Because you said you were maybe wrestling with it.
At first, initially, I do love, by the way, that he's always like, I am Boba Fett. It's like, I think most people know. In the galaxy, but I love it, and it's consistent. And so Galen Howard is the actor that plays the City Hall clerk, and he does a great job. He wears a mustache in a lot of his work. Looking at his IMDb profile, but it works really well in Star Wars. I'll start there. I think there would have been a time, Joseph, maybe 2015 era, that I don't know if I would have loved this scene, that it would have felt like an episode of The Office or early season of Veep or something like that. Two shows I do love, but you know what I mean? It just had a real world vibe to it. But I don't know what's changed over the years. I just think something about it, and also what they are doing with the Major Domo character, with Garza Fwip, they are playing in that world. They are talking about the red tape and the bureaucracy, and it ends up working for me. So when the sequence started, Boba Fett, do you have an appointment? I was like, okay. And I don't know. I think I'm not stopping at that anymore. I'm letting myself kind of engage more with what they're using the comedy for. So therefore, it ends up working. But that particular sequence initially tripped me up a slight bit.
Yeah, I think for me there is. We did an episode about this a while back. This tension in Star Wars between the romantic, mythic storytelling, where you kind of don't care about the real world details, and then the real practical. How does the Falcon actually work? Tell me about coaxium and is Star Wars has expanded, starting I think even with the prequels, with Lucas being really into like, I want to talk about the socio-political side of this. I want to talk about the kind of almost comparison to real world stuff of there are banks and there are clerks and there are day-to-day people, and it's not just all mythic heroes. There's day-to-day.
Yeah.
And that tension can still pop up sometimes, particularly when you're in the mood for like Boba Fett. He is, he's mythic. He's, fallen into the belly of the beast, but he has emerged, but he's wounded. And now he's looking at figures of who he could be. It can all be very mythic and cool. So then when you run into like, twerp at the DMV, it suddenly feels like you're crashing back into a kind of reality. But I feel like that's a part of what Star Wars does.
And I think it's a part of what this series is continuing to do with this myth of Boba Fett. It's literally this: I am Boba Fett, the character people loved in the 80s. Who are you? You don't have an appointment being here. And we're in a new world now. And I do think it works on that level.
Yeah. And I thought it was really funny. And I thought it was other power dynamics. I thought it was really funny the way that, kind of first level. I get paid, space minimum wage to work the front desk. It gets pushed aside by the major domo, and he goes, oh,
yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, great. You want to handle it? Okay, great. The assistant manager wants to handle it. Great, then
you got it.
I'm good for me. I'll take my lunch.
Yep.
Yeah. The male Hutt wiping his face with a rodent was, upsetting, but also like what a great evolution of want to show that these are not characters who have respect for the powerless.
Absolutely, and as an animal lover, Grace and I were really, really upset with that twin. Really upset.
Understandably so. Yeah. How did you feel? This is one of my other moments where I feel like all the litter talk paid off when you saw a couple of the litter carriers shifting as the conversation went on. Like that's a lot of work for them.
We were commenting on that too. Yes. Again, more abuse of the powerless, right? Yeah, absolutely. And the whole, especially to hear, I didn't see your litter arrive, to hear it several times already, 2 chapters in, and then here you go. This is what everyone else is used to seeing. It worked on that level too for me.
Yeah, and it's good comedy that just drives home. Everybody is saying like, well, nobody believes you're really powerful because you aren't being carried on a litter. And then you see it and like, your power is literally built on other people. My power is mine.
And they took their time with the drums, everything about it, and just the slow reveal, the walk. They do not speed that up. They take the time, and again, the show's very confident in what it's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were some other comedy or whimsy moments for you?
I mentioned the Fennec one, but I think I highlight again, their Hutts. We'll have to get permission if we want to kill them. This is a great runner. I want to see this all through the show. Just Fennec, like, is it time? Can I kill them? I'm ready.
This one. Yeah, absolutely great.
You mentioned it, but it's a great comedy moment and action moment. But with the Fett's look, his eyes of anger are interesting just on themselves, by themselves. But Fett's look at the blaster rifle when it breaks is a great yoink. What? Huh? Record scratch moment.
I love that fury face he gets of like, I am in warrior mode. It's like I'm almost detached. I give in fully. He's not tapping into like the light or the dark side of the force. He's like tapping into the fury force.
Fury force. Yes.
And he's there in those eyes. Yeah. It's so great. I like the grumpy. I am holding it the same about the Gaffy station.
Yeah. In Tashi Station, the bartender is Alan Graff. I looked this up. I've been love looking at these little these performers. A ton of stunt performers are in roles in these episodes. It's a really interesting choice. And Alan Graff's a stunt guy, and just him nodding, yep, while he brushes off the glass from his bar as Fett leaves. Like, yep, another day at Tashi Station. They deserve that. I thought that was a real subtle comedy moment.
Yeah, I noticed that on the second viewing of like, it almost seemed like, well, yep, it's a mess, but things worked out in the end.
What you're supposed to do, yeah.
Well, that was right. And I do love that Boba Fett claimed his drink.
Yeah.
Kind of continuing that, like when you have a victory, you deserve fluid.
Yes.
Yeah. I liked a lot of the comedy beats in the training.
Mm-hmm.
Of the Tusken Raiders. I like it when Boba Fett's like a bantha, yes?
Yes. Oh,
does that demonstration, trying to connect the dots. And one beat that I specifically wanted to ask you about is there's the in the whole montage of Tuskens trying to learn to jump from one speeder to the other, there's the Tusken who appears to successfully make it and then must just lose their balance because they just go falling off.
Yes, very realistic. I I don't do box jumps in the gym for a reason. I can't get off the ground fast. So I love. I feel that Tusken Raider.
Yeah. Did that comedy work for you?
It did. Yeah. No, the whole sequence is very realistic. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so moving forward, what else you got?
I do like the exchange of what does the spice look like? Yeah, like that. It's it's a joke format for sure, but it works. And again, I love seeing Boba have more spirit than the original trilogy Boba, which by the way that works because that's him in that time. This is a little bit of that feisty kid on Camino and the one we got to spend time with in the Clone Wars. Feisty and angry, but this is a different version of it. But it's like it's a connective thread for me. I'm enjoying watching him have a little comedy, have a little emotions, have a little feeling, have a little sarcasm, and definitely have some thoughts.
Yeah, and still, I think there is, to me, still a connection to original trilogy where he says things short and to the point.
Yeah,
totally. A little bit of that kind of terrifying monotone.
Totally, yeah, totally. It's definitely there, but just enjoying that it's the complete Boba.
Yeah, the what does spice look like? Yeah, you're right. It is kind of a completion of a. It's a little bit of a. Oh, is he standing behind me?
Yeah.
Kind of that part of it, but the actual line, "What does spice look like?" just kind of cracked me up. Of just like somebody trying that, like. How foolish do you think Boba Fett is? This is why you're known in the galaxy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, who are you kidding? Like just the level of hubris made me laugh.
Yeah, the level of disrespect, right? For the writer, for him, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of loved everything about that. The engine droid, with the multiple arms, and there's that sense of like whimsy with just like I'm cranking this, I'm changing this level. It attached to all of the great action scenes with the big rocket on top, which is just such a space fantasy idea. It's like a Western. It's a locomotive, except for it's got a big engine, it's got a rocket on the top. But it's cut back and forth between like the action that was legitimately thrilling and had meaning, and then the silliness and the fun of this droid,
Total weird Star Wars in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so it wasn't just like, we like Star Wars when it's really serious and mythic and badass. It still got that like, the silly, fun weirdos everywhere.
Yeah, it reminded me a little bit of the astromech droid and the Chapter 8 of Mando that just suddenly, is piloting the rowing the boat through the molten lava there, right? And just like arms come up and just a weird, wonderful use of droids.
Yeah, and I think my favorite thing is they getting thrown from the train and then popping up on all those limbs and just that absolutely exit, screen right scuttle.
Yeah,
just the speed of that is like, this is not my problem. I'm out of here.
Yep.
Absolutely great. And final thing for me, the reaction to everything about the reaction to the lizard of Boba Fett trying to process what it is and apologizing for swallowing it. But I think the key one for me is when it comes out after his experience and him saying, "I thought that was part of the dream."
and to say, and not to say with like. He's not in full control of his words yet. He's just kind of just woke up from the greatest nap of my life. Did I imagine that?
Yeah. And I love that in Star Wars too. Like there's some super weird things that everybody's like, oh yeah, no, that's a kind of normal thing in the galaxy. We all know about it. And then there's other things from individual cultures. Both as like, I was not aware of lizards that went up your nose and helped facilitate a vision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other moments of comedy or whimsy for you?
A lot in it, but no, that's my list for now.
Excellent. Well, any directorial moments that jumped out at you? There's a lot always celebrated about the individual directors, so we want to look at any moments that popped out to us. So, any for you?
I think to take this script and to know that you need to find the space in it and to let the images tell a lot of the story in an episode. Again, you said about communication. And not a ton of dialogue. The use of the land as a character. I thought there was a lot of those kind of choices that Steph Green and the team. And Dean Cundy is the cinematographer. I mean, this guy's shot so many things to have him play around in the volume too. It looked nice, looked beautiful. But it was just the use of the land and the space in the story.
Yeah, I think I really agree with that. I think two things for me. The vision, obviously the way it's scripted is important, but the way it's constructed to be dreamlike and frenetic. And I particularly loved the way that as he was walking up to the tree, that it flashed between his current self and his, bounty hunter, his past self that he's lost, and
Yeah.
in particular with the, the old gray white jumpsuit underneath. So it was very clearly who I have been, who I am now, and who I have been is facing this challenge.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything about that vision was great. It's great to see that kind of different storytelling, visual storytelling in Star Wars. Final thing for me is sometimes in this section, we really want to shout out individual shots or moments. But one of the things that the director does as well is balance the tone.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that a lot of this is told visually. There are definitely some shots that take their time, and you need to have patience with it. But somehow the episode is still just electric and dynamic throughout, and it is just an expert mix of comedy, depth, action, and that tonal consistency. That the success of that is what is, I think, so moving to me about this episode.
Yeah, both these episodes have been really cohesive, is the word I've heard describe them, and you're so right. That's one of the I think perhaps often overlooked thing of a director. I'm not a film director. There's others out there. I know you've done a lot of directing yourself, Joseph, at theater and everything, but it's the same type of thing of a bunch of actors, a bunch of elements, a bunch of parts, and can you find an emotional through line, a tone through line? Very well done in this episode. Even some of those moments that early on I was like, oh, this is some Office Place comedy, especially on second rewatch, does not feel out of place. And everything about it, again, confidence in this episode and in the show is very high.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to touch on?
Two things. One I did mention, I will mention again, though. I really am loving Jennifer Beals as Garsa Whip. The quiet size, as I said, hidden beneath the decorum is really fascinating to me. And I want a spin-off special, about an hour, just her of running the sanctuary, just like a documentary, do cutaways of her in a chair talking about it. I'm really fascinated. She's doing such a good job with it. And then the other one for me, I just love how massives are now the cutest things in Star Wars.
Right? The things that were terrifying are now like, oh, buddy.
Yeah. Yep. We want one now. We want one.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out again to the music. I love that it does have a connection to Mandalorian in style, but it is still being its own thing. But that Boba Fett theme with the vocalizations that just feel really appropriate for this storytelling. And it's 2 episodes in, it was obviously some of those themes were introduced in Mandalorian season 2 Tragedy, but it's really got what you want from me out of music. Of it gets you pumped of like, oh no, Boba Fett's gonna do something.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. And obviously so much credit going to, Ludwig for the work he's done, the theme, but Ludwig's, worked very closely for years with Joseph Shirley, who is doing a lot of the score here. And I think it's, for me, maybe not for others, but for me, it's really in sync and it's working.
Absolutely. And there's definitely some just subtle score stuff that's really pushing into some different territory, but still working for me. So I'm very excited about that. We teed this up that we're going to talk about predictions or hopes for next week. In particular, a little bit of the anxiety of what is going to happen to the Tuskens, and is their fate connected to what Boba Fett is? If Boba Fett has a larger motivation in becoming the crime lord of Tatooine. What are your hopes, predictions, fears, Ken?
You're putting some fears in my heart there, not just rancors there. This idea that, look, Boba Fett, to me, at what we've seen so far, 2 chapters in, is no longer left for dead on the sands of Tatooine. He is no longer wretched. He was reborn there, and that's been fascinating. So to see that play out and to see where it goes, and I said it last week, and I'll say it again. I definitely want to see the show maybe catch up to where Crime Lord timeline is the more dominant one versus the Tusken Raider timeline, but that does not mean I want the Tusken timeline to go away. I am just enthralled by what they're doing with it and what it means, and I want every week to have both. I really do. And I think they might work to that, where the final episode, maybe it's more in the Crime Lord timeline. By the way, I'm not even calling them flashbacks anymore. I just don't think that's accurate.
No.
The timelines are right. Anyways, a big hope for Nick. I'm fascinated that we are seeing Boba Fett go this amazing transformation. Very spiritual, but in the present day, again, he is still a crime lord, and I know the series is clearly aware of that, and it's aware of what it's doing. So I'm hoping we get you just even more clearly start to see these two journeys intersect. And what's he getting out of life and his goals in the present day? I think it's there. I think it all, like I said, it's definitely connecting. I'm excited, and I'm with only 7 chapters. I think you can start moving it forward as much as you want. Do we see the saving of Fennec? Do we see that? Do we get a little bit more of that? Play out that story. What does that mean for now? And I'm just excited by that. But it hangs over it. Hangs over it. He's so nice. He still wants to be a crime lord. What are they going to do with that?
Yeah, definitely on my list of hopes. Now that we spent some time with it, of so understanding. This is the Boba Fett who rescued Fennec, who saw somebody having a hard time and offered them respect because it is the right thing to do, offered them a second chance because it is the honorable thing to do, and then is rewarded by having an amazing partner in going forward. The Boba Fett who rescued Fennec Shan is making so much sense to me that I almost want to see it from his perspective, maybe from Fennec's perspective. We'll see if we get to that. I think for me, this is a point at which to really, we've had 2 episodes and I feel like the show is telling us what it is. And I feel like this isn't, to me, a show where, they're going to tell us what happened with the Tuskens so we can move on with the crime lord stuff. These are 2 stories that interconnect, that are moving together. And I'm with you. I think that we're going to keep seeing both timelines and they're going to comment on one another. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, this episode is about 15 minutes crime lord and, about 45 minutes, not quite 35 minutes of the Tusken Raider timeline. I wouldn't be surprised to see that flipped in an episode. But I feel like the show is telling us these are these 2 interlocking stories.
Yeah.
And what I'm really wondering about is, so Boba Fett found a new community. He found a new kind of armor. He's found a new way to be. What makes him go, now I need and want to reclaim that old armor and merge it with my new identity, right?
Right.
Because he's still wearing those Tusken robes over the armor. It's not a rejection of the Tusken. It's a merging of these identities. So there's the great hopeful possibility that something changes in Boba's life where he's like, I need to fully face my past. I need to be an active participant in the galaxy and go back to the kind of the life I knew. But the thing I'm extremely terrified of is that his family's going to be slaughtered.
Yeah, I get you on that.
Because this is such a great triumphant moment with the Pikes, but there's a part of me that feels like, yeah, that was a great threat from Boba Fett saying any violence you or death you pass out will give back to you tenfold. Are the Pikes going to be okay when those Pikes go back and tell the Syndicate of, like, the Tusken Raiders want us to pay? Is that really going to go well? Like, I think there's a lot of story left to be told to get Boba Fett to the point where he is reemerging and getting his ship, getting his arm.
Yeah, and it still has a little bit of violence and anger in him. Yeah,
absolutely. And I feel like right now, for where we're at in the story, I'm loving the idea of, I have been the warrior. I want to be the leader. I want to be the one who makes the call. And also, I want to bring all of this honor and respect that I maybe know from my own childhood and what I've really learned from the Tuskens. And I want to bring that to this lying, backstabbing, red tape crime world. Those are all great and interesting motivations for me. But the absolute deep bond with the Tuskens is also raising that question of, is there a practical end game? Like, is he trying to move up in the crime ladder because he is going to make somebody answer for what they did to his family?
I think that's a great thought and a great prediction. I'm fascinated with this idea of could he be using this position of power and just saying, hey, the underworld's going to be there. Let me try to affect some change from within, ? I don't know, but and a greater motivation. Love that journey. Love it. That's a great thought going forward. And a scary one. I don't want to see nothing wrong with the Massives, the Banthas, those Raiders, the Warrior. Nope.
No, I want him to live a happy life for a little while and then go, I have some stuff that I need to complete. And they're like, we totally understand you need to go to college.
Yeah.
you need to go back to grad school and face some things with our blessing.
Yeah.
Boba. That's what I would love to happen. I am I'm very concerned.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really liked this week, we talked last week. I had Googled the term daimyo to understand it in the real world, and in the real world, that term is a powerful person, but in the middle or the upper part of the ladder, but not the top of the ladder. And I was really intrigued by the fact that he keeps using that phrase. That's clearly a position of power. And then that Fennec line that you've highlighted of saying they're huts. We would have to get permission if you want to kill them. Very great for Fennec's continuing story of wanting to kill everybody. But for me, that was a real confirmation that he's at a rung on the ladder, and is he happy staying there?
For now, we'll see. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and does he just need to be the daimyo to accomplish something specific, or is he going to want to move up the ladder?
The Rise of Boba Fett.
The Rise of Boba Fett, indeed. We always want to end with some fun. So, Ken, what merch or toys would you want based on this episode?
Okay. Yeah. I want the twins. Okay, because I have a lot of Jabba merchandise. Black Series one. So I want the twins. I also want maybe a Jello mold of the twins. I'm sorry for saying it out loud, but I think you could do both. So in Star Wars in the Kitchen and Star Wars a collectible Black Series scale twin set.
Yeah, I want the twins as some sort of bed and bath product. Like there's a little mold of them with a brush, so like I could use them to scrub my body the way they use that poor roach.
Yes, turnabout. It's fair play.
Yeah, and it is torturous to watch these great episodes, knowing I have ordered some Boba Fett action figures, but it's going to be months before they arrive. But I still want more 3 3/4 action figures because that's my go-to thing. I want a HasLab action figure playset of Boba's vision. And, it comes with a tree. You can switch it out to be water or sand.
Yeah.
It comes with a different Boba Fett action figures for different part of his vision. So you can swap it out. I love the idea of taking something as spiritual and shifting of a vision and going, how can we make that in hard plastic?
Yeah, it could be a good Lego set too.
A good Lego set, too. All right. We have done a long episode because we are very, very excited about this show and about this chapter. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, we have the Force Center podcast feed. We found on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram and YouTube as well, where we are rebroadcasting audio versions of our show on there. Thanks for those who joined us from Star Wars Explained after Alex and Molly had Joseph come on to talk about the child, the warrior, and the leader. We thank you for subscribing. We are also on Facebook at Force Center Podcast. You can get merch at tpublic.com/user/Force Center. You can get an audiobook on us by going to audibletrial.com/Force Center. And the podcast available in a lot of different spots. We're housed on Acast. It used to be on Anchor. On Acast. I keep doing that. Still new. Acast. And then we go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and a lot more on the way. Just search and you can find us. You can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. You can follow me at Ken Napzok. Go to kennapzok.com. Oh, and I also want to say we have that show Databank Dive on the Companion. It's exclusive for the Companion. You can find out information either in our Patreon page where you can get a discount on a subscription to the Companion. But listen to the show. It's a limited series right now. Databank Dive. We're having a lot of fun doing it. Then again, follow me at Ken Napzok and go to kennapzok.com. Joseph, you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw, and check out all of my other comedy adventures on my website at josephscrimshaw.com. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for Cammy and Fixer, this has been the Book of Boba Fett Report.